What is up? We are back on the Tiger 2 with the new 3D skin called the
Kampfgruppe Schneide.
The last time I made a video about this tank was over a year ago, when when I was demonstrating the equipment 2.0 with turbos, with hardening and stuff like that. This time around I am going to run the tank with a hardening and an IRM instead of a turbo, and we're just going to admire this new 3D skin. Man, it looks so cool. It looks good in the summer map, it looks good in the winter map, it looks good in the desert map. And we are here now on Mannerheim line, and just want to derp around and play with this tank just to admire the 3D skin, because this 3D skin actually reminds me a lot of my childhood days when I used to play with the TAMIYA model kits and dioramas, and I used to make a Tiger 2 that looked almost exactly like this, and I took it to school for show and tell, and that's really cool looking. And I'm glad that they made this 3D skin. I hope they make more skins like this that are more period correct, more kind of accurate, instead of those kind of fantasy skins that are more prevalent nowadays. This thing's got the all kinds of equipment mounted onto it, some transport stuff, airdrop stuff. It's got two tubes on top of the turret that actually transporting HE shells, if I'm not mistaken. Those are actually containers for the HE shells. And then towards the right of the tank you see a long cylindrical thing that is clamped onto the side skirts of the tank. That is actually an airdrop container where they can be dropping rifles and equipment for infantry and stuff like that. On top of that tube is also a if I'm not mistaken, there is an American bazooka on this tank. The skin on the Tiger 2 is also Zemerite, is that what it's called? The sticky, anti-sticky stuff for anti-magnetic mines. I guess that's what the Germans used to use on the tanks, and that's really cool looking. Now, if you recall, this tank was buffed in 2020. The alpha of the gun from 320 buffed to 360, just to compete with all the modern tier 8 heavy tanks that have 390 alpha. So that was pretty good. It worked well for the Tiger 1 and the Tiger 2. Both of them were buffed, and also the front hull armor thickness was increased from 160 millimeters to 150 millimeters to 160 millimeters, which made it, with the sloped armor, it made it a lot more bouncy. You can see me bounce a lot of shells here. I've already bounced 1120, presumably from my front hull armor and from my turret armor as well, which was increased from 185 millimeters to 245 millimeters. Huge increase in the turret and the hull armor, the sloped hull armor. So this really helped a lot in increasing the longevity of the Tiger 2, which is why I wanted to make another video of the Tiger 2, even though it's been a year that I've made this video. But I felt like now is a good time to make this video again, just to remind a lot of the old timers and the new players that the Tiger 2 is not as bad as it used to be. Even though it was buffed 2 years ago, I don't see a lot of people actually taking advantage of this buff. This tank is actually very powerful now, and not the most powerful, but indeed very competitive. If you should decide to shoot premium shells, it's even more competitive. You see me doing already 3,300 damage. I was firing standard shells for most of the game until I stopped panning that IS 2 version 2. For the kill shot, I switched to the premium shells and I didn't switch back to the standard shells. But just as well, you can see that this tank is actually not a bad tank at all in 2022. Even if you're firing standard shells, if you are in single tier matchmaking like I am right now, or top tier matchmaking, it is no problem for you to be firing standard shells and being aggressive. No problem at all taking on low tiered enemy and same tier 8 enemies. No problem at all taking care of them, disposing of them very easily. In my last video a year ago, I did run the turbo and I felt like turbo and optics was good for this tank, but you know what, I feel like in most scenarios the turbo is not going to be very useful, because even with turbo, the power to weight ratio only increases very slightly and it is not significant enough to make a huge difference on the performance of the tank. Whereas if I was running IRM, the IRM actually helps to increase the hull rotation and the turret rotation, and also it helps a little bit in the gun stabilization. Now the gun stabilization doesn't really need a lot of help because you have accuracy of 0.28 already, but the gun stabilization is 50% of a vertical stabilizer. Vertical stabilizer gives you 20% less penalty gun stabilization, but with the IRM it gives you 10%, so it basically works as half a vertical stabilizer. And I think this is a good compromise because it gives you a little bit of mobility and it gives you a little bit of gun stabilization. So I'm going to stick to this and say that this is going to be the best option, better than turbo, I think. And then with the improved hardening, it helps you survive a little bit longer, and a little bit of gun handling, a little bit of mobility. I think this is the way to go. I made a huge mistake here. Instead of stopping and shooting, I should have just kept pushing forward and got to that low ground right next to where this M12 is, and I would have been a lot safer. That is what I should have done. I made a little mistake here, and this cost me the game because my team ended up losing and I ended up dying here because I can't spot that 40 TP. You know what, if I had that optics, I could have spotted out that 40 TP, I could have spotted out that Scorpion, but I chose to go with this loadout with the IRM and with the hardening. In hindsight, yeah, maybe optics would have been better, but it's too late for that now. I died, the team lost, but I did get an ace tanker out of this game and over 3.7k damage, which isn't too bad. I'm going to stick to the hardening and the IRM. I think this is the best choice. But what do you think of that new 3D skin? Pretty cool looking. I like it. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.